Good morning, Honors Math 2. We are going to do notes for 10.6 today, which is going to be solved by different methods. And you're going to see review all the methods we've done for solving. And solving means, what does x equal? And we should have two answers on almost every one because they're quadratics. And we've gone over different methods, and now we're going to talk about when would be a good method to use and when would be not a good method to use. And if you don't like to choose, do the quadratic formula. We're going to talk about when you get the same answer over and over. Okay, so get out 10.6 notes, and we're going to skip the warm-up. So get out your yellow notes. And we're going to talk about this, and you may need to fill in some blanks on your notes. So there are, I'll just highlight them. There are 4 different methods we have done. So I'm highlighting your 4 different methods that are written on your notes. Okay. Square rooting. This is best when you have no b value or it's already in vertex form. So for example, this one right here is already in vertex form, like we did with the word problems on Tuesday. Real easy to solve by square rooting. Or something like this where you see there's no b value. So y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, what did we do with the quadratic formula? If it has no b value like this, really easy to solve by square rooting. Remember 2 answers, because when you square root, you always get a plus or minus. So if you see something that's already in vertex form or doesn't have a b value, I would say solve by square rooting. It'll be your easiest. Okay. Factoring, sometime when it's really easy to factor and you can look at it and you can factor like what multiplies to be 21, adds to be 7. That's not going to work. 7 and 3. This should have been 10. This should have been 4. My bad. So something like x minus 7, x plus 3, where it's really easy to solve it. And you say, oh, x equals 7 and x equals negative 3. If it's something like that and you can really solve it pretty easy and don't need to do any hard math, solve it by factoring. Most people, when they look at it, they're not sure if it's a factor and this has no a term. That's a really easy thing to try to factor right away. Okay? Complete a square. A lot of people like to complete the square. It's one of their favorite things to do. Good thing to do with completing the square, remember it's much easier if this is an even number here for your b value. So it has a, b, and c. Okay? Real easy to do. It's because the b is an even number. And a doesn't have that GCF that we took out yesterday. Really easy to complete the square. This is not factorable, so you know. So really easy to complete the square. Okay? Still 2 answers. If you're unsure, you can use quadratic formula for anything. So if you don't want to factor this, if you don't want to complete the square, quadratic formula can be used for any equation. But the best one is to look at it and you're like, I don't know if that's factorable. I don't like the GCF's not there. The b value is odd. I would do the quadratic formula. Okay? So anytime. So on the test, it will ask you to solve. And it will not tell you what method to use. You can use whatever method you want. So we're going to talk about which method would be, by looking at the equation, which would be the easiest. If you use the quadratic formula every time, that is up to you. It will always work. But we're going to talk about which ones would be easier, and then we're going to do one equation and we're going to solve it. Actually, on the homework, you're going to do one equation and solve it 3 different ways. I'll kind of go over it with you guys, just to show you that it doesn't matter which way you do it. Okay, hopefully you guys are caught up. I'll give you guys a second. Okay, so let's look at some equations and see what we want to do. So the first one we're going to look at are these 2, okay, on your notes. So the next 2 boxes. So if I look at this first one, wow, it has a 5 in front. Odd number for b. Don't want to complete the square. Plus this is not the same GCF here. Maybe it's factorable, maybe it's not. Maybe I want to try it, maybe I don't. So I would pick the quadratic formula. Okay, so let's do this one by the quadratic formula. I would suggest this is the best way to do this one. I don't think anything else is very good. So A is 5. Wait, let's first make sure it's equal to 0. B is 13. And C is -1. So opposite of B, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. So we have -13 plus or minus the square root of 169. That's what 13 squared is. And then minus a minus is going to be plus 20 over 10. Or -13 plus or minus square root of 189 over 10. So 189, like I always want to check just in case, but the square root of 189 comes out to be a decimal. So don't take the square root. It's not a perfect square, so we have to simplify it. I think I told you guys if the digits add up to be 9 or a multiple 9, you want to take out a 9. So this would be 21. 3 and 3, 3 and 7, so the 3's match. So we have -13 plus or minus 3 radical 21 over 10. And all three of these have to be divisible by the same number to reduce them, and they're not, and so you're done. So really, you had no option to do the quadratic other than do the quadratic formula on this problem. Okay? Okay, let's look at the second one. So the second one, kind of in a weird form. If you want to move the 36 over, you can, and write it like this. But I'm hoping you see there's no b value at all. So I'm just going to solve it by square rooting. So I'm going to move the 169 to the other side, and you could actually factor it too, but we're just going to do it like this. So we have x squared equals 36 over 169. We did this at the beginning, actually middle of last chapter. Take the square root. Square root of x squared is x. The square root of this is going to be 36 plus or minus over the square root of 169. Well, I know the square root of 36 is 6. And I just did 13 squared is 169, so that's 13. So x equals plus or minus 6 over 13. Now you could always do the quadratic formula on this. Your b would just be 0. But why? Much faster to do it that way. Much easier than doing anything else. You could factor it also as a difference in squares, but this is the easiest way because there is no b value. So this is square rooting. Okay? Okay, let's look at the next couple. So, and this is just a hodgepodge of different questions and you guys looking at and seeing what's the best way. Okay, so these are both equal to 0. This first one. Now, I may look at this and say, I think that's really easy to complete the square. And I might do it by completing the square. Somebody would say, wow, I think I can factor that. I'm going to do a factor. So I'm going to do both ways. So I'm actually going to complete the square first. Okay, so to complete the square, remember you move the 60 over. So you get x squared plus 4x. We did this yesterday, so you guys should be good at this. Half of 4 squared is 2, which is 4, sorry. Half of 4. So over here, that's a 4, sorry. It'd be x plus 2 squared. Over here it'd be 64. Now, no need to move this back over because unlike yesterday, we don't need it in vertex form. We just need to solve. So we would square root both sides. So you get x plus 2 equals plus or minus 8. And then you subtract 2. So you get x equals -2 plus 8, which is 6. And x equals -2 minus 8, which is -10. So you get x equals 6 and x equals -10. Two answers. Now, somebody might have said, wait, I could have factored that. Because I know that I can multiply and get -60 and add to before by going 10 and negative 6. And they say, oh, I could have factored this x plus 10, x minus 6, set these equal to 0, and got the exact same answers. Don't forget about factoring. Everyone like starts going through this whole chapter and they're like, oh, I don't want to factor anymore. But that's really fast. I think that's faster than completing the square. Okay, same exact answer. No matter what way you pick, you should get the same answer, which we'll talk about on the homework in a second. So I've done one by square rooting. I've done one by quadratic formula that I had to do. I showed you I could do either method here. On this one, again, no B term. I'm just going to solve by square rooting. Really easy to do. Can't reduce radical 15. That's my whole answer. Pretty easy. So don't make things more difficult. If you can see it's very easy to factor, or you can see that it doesn't have a B term and I can solve it pretty well, then do it that way. Okay, when you're done with that, turn the page. Okay, I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to try this. Okay, I'm going to take the papers away. I'm going to have you try this. If I was here, we'd talk about which method you use and everything, but I'm going to have you try this. I'm going to give you probably 5 minutes or so to try these. And then I'll bring the paper back what I did. No matter what method you picked, you should get the same answer. So I'll give you guys about 5 minutes to try this as I pull the paper away and do it on my own. Make sure you come back and listen because we're going to graph next. I'm going to give you a couple more minutes. Remember, no matter what way you try, you should get the same answer. It's a lot of preference on what you want to do. I wish I had a camera to see what you guys are doing. I don't know what way you guys did, but I'm going to show you what I did. I'll put it up here for a little bit. The first one I did, completing the square, I'll tell you my rationale. Nothing multiplied to be 12 and gave me 10, so I knew it wasn't factorable, even though this is an x squared. So I always try to factor something that's just 1x squared. I saw that that's even, so it's much easier, I think, to complete the square than do the quadratic formula. So I chose completing the square. If you chose to do the quadratic formula, you should have been able to reduce. I think you get 10 plus or minus 2 radical 13 over 2, and you should reduce the same thing. Up to you. Okay? Second one, I know this is really easy to factor because negative 30 is negative 6 plus and positive 5. I factored, I got this. Make sure if you do the quadratic formula on this one, that you simplify it completely so you get the exact same answer. No matter what method you pick, you should get the same answer. I would not have done completing the square just because that's not an even number for B. So I don't like to complete the square unless it's like 5 or 10 or 12 or something like that where you can take half. Okay? On the test, you're totally free to pick whichever method you want. Just make sure it's simplified all the way. Okay? And Ms. Gross, anytime you want to pause, just hit pause if you need more time. Okay, really important we talk about graphing. So we're going to finish off right now by talking about graphing. On your homework, you're also going to do some graphs. Okay? We're going to do graphs in different forms. Just a little review from last chapter and this chapter. This first one is in vertex form. We should know the vertexes H and K. We talked about that a lot yesterday. So we have 2 and 12. And our line of symmetry is x equals 2. So I'm going to put the point 2, 12 up. Now, unfortunately, graph's pretty small, so I'm going to number these by 2. And so I'm just going to number these by 1. I can do that. So 2, 12 is right here on my graph. Now, I do know this graph is a little bit skinny and upside down. Okay? To find the x-intercepts, you have to solve this. Do not make it hard on yourself. Just make this equal 0, because remember you make y equals 0 to find the x-intercepts, and solve this, just like we did with the word problems yesterday. So I'm going to move the 12 over to the other side. I'm going to divide by -3. Take the square root of both sides. Got to get what x is. Square root of 4 is plus or minus 2. Oops. Don't need the parentheses there. Square root and square cancel out. And then I'd add 2. So you should get x equals 2 plus 2 and x equals 2 minus 2. So you have an x-intercept of 4, 0 and 0, 0. So let's put that on the graph. 4, 0 and 0, 0. So see how we know the line of symmetry is x equals 2? It's right in the middle there. I'll put it in pink for you. You don't have to draw it, but just so you know. So right now I have enough to graph this. I can just connect it and graph this. If I wanted to find the y-intercept, you guys should be able to see that, but if anytime you want to find the y-intercept, just let x equal 0. So y equals -3, 0 minus 2 squared plus 12, and solve for y. Well, that's -2 squared, which is 4. So you get y equals 0. So our y-intercept is 0, 0, which we kind of already knew on this one, but you won't know it on the homework. So this one again was in vertex form. Really easy to find the vertex, line of symmetry. Not as easy to find the x-intercepts and y-intercepts. Okay, we're going to go through every scenario. Remember, there's vertex form, standard form, and factored form. Okay, so let's go to the next one. The next one is in standard form. So really hard, only thing I can tell is the y-intercept is 0, -5. That's the only thing I can tell on this graph right now. Okay? I can't see anything unless I factor it or complete the square. And it's up to you what you want to do. Okay? I'm going to complete the square because I want it in vertex form. So I'm going to make this 0, move the 5 to the other side. So I have x squared minus 4x plus square equals 5 plus square. Half of 4 squared is 4. So I get x minus 2 squared equals 9. So my my vertex form, I would move the 9 back over and write it like that. So I know the vertex is 2, -9. Okay, again on this graph, I'm going to number by 2s. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. -2, -4, -6, -8, -10. Should have made the graphs bigger. I'm going to number these just by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 2, -9 is going to be right there. I know my axis of symmetry is x equals 2, so when I find my x-intercepts, that should be right in the middle. I look at this parabola, and it is opening up, just a standard parabola. Okay? The last thing, I do have my, if I want to put my y-intercept, I do have that, so it should just be open. I want to find the x-intercepts. So we go back to this, and we solve. And so what we do is we solve by square rooting. Now, if you wanted to in the beginning, complete the square and solve it that way, you would also get your x-intercepts. So you don't have to turn it in vertex form to find your x-intercepts. It's just a little bit easier to find your vertex line of symmetry with that way. But if you went and completed the square here, to begin with, move the 5 over, and did that, and then once you, not my bad, we did complete the square. Sorry, if you want to factor it and do it that way, you can. Okay? Sorry. So if you want to factor this into x minus 5, x plus 1, you would also get your x-intercepts. But I'm going to solve by square rooting. And we'll see we'll get the same x-intercepts as that. So x minus 2 equals plus or minus 3. Add 2. So you get x equals 2 plus 3, which is 5. And you get x equals 2 minus 3, which is -1. Same thing as I factor. So we have 5, 0, and -1, 0. Again, make sure these are written in the right form. So 5, 0, -1, 0. Everything should be good. Line of symmetry should be right in the middle. So you have lots of options. Most people prefer putting it in vertex form. It's just easier. Okay, but you could factor and find your x-intercepts because it's solving. You can do the quadratic formula, find your x-intercepts because it's solving. Okay? Okay, last one. This one is already in factored form. It doesn't tell me much, but it does tell me if I let y equals 0, it can tell me my x-intercepts. The 1/4 doesn't matter. I can tell that that equals 0 at -3, and that equals 0 at +3. So our x-intercepts are -3, 0, and 3, 0. So I can tell you that. You should remember from last chapter that if it's 1/4, it's really wide parabola, and it looks pretty wide right now. So I can just leave it the form it is and find the x-intercepts. Okay, now that I know the x-intercepts, I can figure out the line of symmetry. Look at the line of symmetry has to be right in the middle of that, which is x equals 0, because the middle of 3 and -3. To find the vertex, all you're going to do is plug in x equals 0. So 1/4 of 0 plus 3 times 0 minus 3 will give you your y value. So that's 1/4 of 3 times -3, or -9/4, which is -2.5 if you want to write it like that, 2.25. So we could write the vertex as 0, -9/4, or 0, -2.25. So let's put that on the graph. 0, 2.25. Whoops, negative. Don't put it there. That would make it upside down. 2.25. Now that makes more sense. Again, if you want to find the y-intercept, you also plug in 0. But these are going to be the same on this graph, not on every graph. Because actually the line of symmetry is 0. That's the only reason it's the same thing. If it wasn't the same thing, if this wasn't, the line of symmetry wasn't 0, you'd plug in 0. Okay? Okay, let's take out your homework if you don't already have it out. And let's take out your homework and look at that, and then I'll tell you what else I want you guys to do. Okay, so on the worksheet, 10.6, I want to explain very well on this because this happens every year. And Ms. Gross has the key if you guys need it. On this question right here, you are doing this same equation 3 different ways. I want you to solve by factoring. Okay? Don't forget to take out a GCF on this factoring part. I want you to solve by quadratic formula, which if you want to take out a GCF, you can. And I want you to solve by completing the square. If you do not get the same answer for all 3, you did something wrong. Okay? This is your preference. Which way do you like it? It depends. Some people just like doing the quadratic formula. Some people really like doing completing the square. Some people like factoring. I'm probably the oddball. I'm going to put factoring here. But probably you guys won't. Okay? But you should have the exact same answers if you simplify it. Okay? So that's the first problem. You're doing the same problem 3 different ways. 2 through 7. You can do any method you want, but I'd like you to find one that you can factor, one you can complete the square, and one you could do the quadratic formula. Not for each problem. That's kind of really confusing, but I want you to pick one of the, try to do one of each, and then the other ones you could do whatever you want. So you might want to go through this part and say, oh, which one's really easy to factor? And factor that one first. And again, I wouldn't factor probably, maybe I'd factor number 7, but maybe I wouldn't because there's a 3 in front. Okay, again, I wouldn't complete the square on number 3 because there's a 2 there. You can. I'm sorry, not a 2 there. What's the one? Sorry, number 5. I wouldn't complete the square because there's a negative 19 there. Can't take half of that. Okay. Up to you, but I'd like you to at least do one quadratic formula, one complete the square, and one factoring. Okay, on the back, okay, you're going to graph very similar to what I just did. One's in vertex form. One's in standard form, and one is in factored form. You could get a decimal on this one just like I did. Okay, I think the lesson is going to be too hard to follow for the next one. So once you're done with 10.6, skip 10.7. We will do this on Friday. And go to the review and start working on the review. Because on Friday we'll do 10.7. On Monday, you'll take a group quiz. And then Tuesday, we'll review everything. Okay, so start doing the review. So you don't have a lot of time to do the review in class, so I suggest you do it right now. Okay, and so you can do all of this. This is all review. We've been covering it last days. So just starts at 12.1, keeps going, 12.1 still. This is 12.2. You can have I's in these answers. Quadratic formula, which we reviewed yesterday. All the imaginary number stuff. This one, you're going to solve by any method you want. Again, you can have some imaginary numbers in your answers. More, you can solve any method you want. And then the graphing that we just covered, but these are both in standard form. Okay, do not, then for some reason I have all these blank pages, my bad. And then you could do the word problems also. I mean, you could go all the way through 36. Okay, it's a good problem, number 36. We'll go over this probably on Tuesday before the test. The only part you can't do is this last section. Okay, so you have lots to do today. You finish up 10.6, work on the review, at least up to number 36, and we'll go over things on Friday. Also, please turn in 10.5 into the basket, or Ms. Gross can pick it up from each group and have it in a stack. I'll put that on the directions, but either if you want to bring one person in each group wants to come put in the basket on the table up here, you can. Or if Ms. Gross wants to pick them up, she can pick them up from each group. Okay? Hope you guys have a great day. Thank you for subbing for me. I'll talk to you guys on Friday. Bye.